of it all, the decision making. It's really important to do decision making in a way that makes financial sense. I am a fiscal conservative. I think it's really important to think about, okay, well, when I spend this money, is that going to be a reasonable return later on? And if I have no idea what's going to have gone in this landscape, I'm not going to want to spend any money on it at all, or I'm going to spend money on a bet every time I spend just to figure out, or worse, it'll be a favor to a landowner who has a priority status. Because there's no way you can allocate the resources unless you know what's going to be happening there, unless you can reasonably guess at it. So this is the comprehensive plan future land use map. And how does this relate to character? It kind of relates to character, and I'll explain it. Because the character thing came from our sort of thinking about how this stuff comes together. And again, we weren't involved in the comprehensive planning process at all. It was all done in-house. And with all respect to the planning process, which I think was a good one, people see the way this stuff comes together differently, and every different way of looking at it has its own merit. So we're totally good with that. Well, the way we see it, though, is this is scenic. Hold on, I have another slide to advance here. Scenic areas, this is all pretty much federal land up here. You're probably all familiar with the BLM and the state lands here. Resource recreation, again, is a very rural landscape, and you can see how this comes up. And you can see in your own experience that that's sort of where those areas already are. So the future is much like the present in a bunch of those areas. And then there's the country, which is a little bit more intensive, and you can see how that kind of follows some corridors that you're all familiar with. And it tracks into some developments that have some large scale. And then up here. And then shoreline and transitional and incorporated. These are areas that have a wide diversity of character, actually. They have sensitivities for other reasons. Around the shorelines, and many of you have heard what are kind of mistakes and foibles in trying to get to a place with shoreline regulation that makes sense. We're still working on it. It's very, very challenging stuff. And it's very, very charged stuff, to be quite honest with you. Of course it should be. But the shorelines are identified in the plan as a special place to look at. And then the transitional and the border are all up in here around the cities, where at the time the plan was written, we really didn't know, how's that place going to be sewered, how are those cities likely to grow in the future, things like that. And so we're really trying to figure that stuff out now during this process, and then feed back to the comprehensive plan and say, look, here's some recommendations based on what we've heard about all this kind of stuff. Of course, incorporated, you can see the cities in the incorporated places in the county. There were some designations for what they call village in the plan down by the casino. And then other potential amendments could create villages elsewhere. Those are sort of concentrated areas of activity. If you have a casino that draws a lot of visitors, and then if you grow some more dense housing and things around it, grow that area based on that economic magnet, why not do something like that? So the county sees that as an asset and decided, okay, well, if you're already investing a lot there, we should allow more to happen in the place where those investments are occurring, because you can leverage that and create economic activity and opportunity. So what did we do? Like I said, we recommend that the existing set of ordinance get completely euthanized. It's way too confusing. It is terrible. I was a land use lawyer for 6 years. Did I mention that? And when I had to go and do that brain death exercise of helping somebody through a process, I had to read codes all the time. Most codes aren't very clear. And some of you may accuse me of writing code that's not clear. I would challenge you to find the same information in the codes you have now. Navigating among 27 ordinances or whatever it is, it's not fun. We will try to iterate through this process as we develop concepts, and when we get met with confusion, we will try our best to clarify that. That's my commitment, is to try to make things as clear as possible. So we're getting there. We're getting there. We have that, but we don't think as a future that that's a very good idea, and I'll explain why. Scenic land is public land.
What?
Who doesn't think it's a good idea?
I will explain why. We're going to try to keep this entertaining. We'll try to move it along. We'll try to make it good. Okay,
Explain
so
now.
We don't intend to designate any land. We would not recommend ever as consultants, and we think that it would be an unwise move to recommend zoning land scenic that's not public already. It's just a way of taking inventory, really, as the scenic district of the federal and the state lands that are, in fact, scenic wildlife areas. Working lands are the farming areas, where you already have 20 or 40 acre parcels routinely, sometimes 160s, sometimes bigger than that, where you have working farms that when they get fragmented by subdivisions and things like that, it tends to interfere with the operations of the farm. How many farmers do we have in the room tonight? Farmers? How do you feel about subdivisions next door? It's all good? Is every farmer in the room feel that way? Yes. No? Yes, some?
Liberty.
Yeah, well, okay. Well, no, I mean, it's different from place to place. Yeah, so this is our current model. We're working through everything, but that's our current model. We've got farming at 40 acres where that's common, 20 acres where that's common.
Individual communities decide for themselves.
Yes! Hold on. We will be doing a mapping exercise where when you come from individual communities, you can help us pick, where these things go, depending on what's appropriate for community. We think that's important.
Amen.
When we have that map, is that map available?
Now, we haven't done the map yet. We did the map
The
last.
map that you have as a demonstration model present.
Oh, this map?
And the source of it, is that Department of Energy, Agriculture?
Oh, no. This is your county map that you all developed during the comprehensive planning process. We didn't write this.
Ah,
This is your
okay.
map. Okay, so the next slide is a state, which 5-acre lots are sort of you could have a horse on it, it's sort of an estate lot. It's not quite agriculture, it's not quite suburbia, it's an estate lot. It's mostly open. Now, you have a lot of this kind of development right now because of the sanitary restrictions has been the default minimum lot size in your rural areas for a long time, particularly on the prairie. And we see this pattern is out there, and this is the type of pattern that it's really hard to subdivide in the future when you get sewer. It's really hard to do to lay it out to make it work when they're in the wrong width. How do you put a street in there and make that work?
Who cares? It's our choice.
In terms of where people tend to live, in terms of, okay, the plan says, at the time that the plan was written, we had about 69% to 70% of people in the county lived in the city, mostly in Rathdrum, mostly in Post Falls, mostly in Coeur d'Alene. Those three accounted for the vast majority of people who live actually in Kootenai County. And the other part lived in the unincorporated county, in the places that we're talking about tonight, because we have nothing to do with the cities. There's no way that the county could go in and tell the cities what to do. So, with that in mind, those cities, 100 years from now, if they're going to absorb 70%, and then contract in the 2010 census, we realized that they got 71% of the population now. So people are actually moving to the cities and not to the unincorporated counties in slightly larger numbers.
That's
And 1%
because
we're
minimum
talking
parcel
about
size is
130,000
20 acres.
What, sir?
That's because minimum parcel size is 20 acres and they can't afford it.
It's 2 and 5.
And we just
And the 5s are actually pretty affordable. I've been to Realtor.com lately. There's a lot of 5s for sale. There's a lot of 5s that ended up in foreclosure, unfortunately, too. It's a bad deal. But in any case, well, you get periodic fluctuations of people that come in from somewhere else. But when you look at
Who
the
cares
overall
about them?
right, you've got fairly expensive real estate in some of the cities as well. I mean, the distribution of lots in various sizes, they're priced pretty well compared to 5-acre lots nationally. You've got a pretty affordable product here. Now, yeah, it's going to be difficult for some people to do. And yeah, you want to have economic development and all that. And yeah, we think that there should be opportunities in the unincorporated county for all of that. So let's just move forward through this real quick. Yeah, that's what I want to do. I really want to get to these bullets and tell you what it is that we're talking about. Because right now, you've got some zoning that says, do you guys know, probably some of you don't like these. How many don't like cluster or conservation development? Yeah, so there's been some pretty bad experience with some of that stuff in the county because it wasn't, to be quite honest with you, it doesn't look like it was very well put together. But the notion that one could do a smaller lot and have a little bit more space, or subdivide some lots off in small pieces and then keep the rest in farming, it's a pretty good idea if it's done in a way that's sensitive to what's going on around it. And so these areas provide those options. We have something that's in there that's called a village, where you could actually do some commercial and some residential. And we'll show you a picture of what that could look like. We're not prescribing it, but we're saying, here's an example. I'm not a great designer of those things, but I can show you, an example of what it could look like. And then, so it says that if you have some land in an estate district, we're not going to tell you how to subdivide it. We do now. But we're not going to tell you in the future. We'll give you, here's a couple of different ways that the county's going to say, yeah, all of that creates the same character, which is consistent with what that place is. So nobody should be very upset. And if we throw the elbow out, it may hurt a little bit, but it won't hurt enough to knock somebody down. Suburban is a 3rd-acre lots with the same kinds of options for pretty dense stuff. Now, suburban you wouldn't do unless you had a sewer or a package plant or something like that. Because really, frankly, I looked at all your soil maps. How many have looked and reviewed all the soil maps in the county for septic systems? So it's not good. You guys have soils that are not good for septic, so you got to have some space to make your septic system work. But you can be pretty dense and build on the soils are good for construction if you can most areas.
We don't want dense buildings.
So you got to have enough density to sewer if you're going to be dense about the development. So we try to provide for that.
We don't want to be dense.
Neighborhood. How many got the press release on neighborhood conservation? Courtney, I promise I will call on you. You must be so tired.
No, I'm tired of being ignored.
Oh, I'm not.
Amen.
Through this presentation.
Amen.
Real quick, I'm being paid to do the work that I do. It's your tax dollars.
Answer our questions.
I've got to get through a presentation because I've never been allowed to actually finish it. We've been going into this.
We don't care.
Let me just say, I will promise you that I will take all your questions outside after the presentation.
No.
It's not that much longer. It's really not that much longer. If you let me get through it.
Outside in the cold?
Sorry. We believe in civility. We really do.
Have our own opinions, but please, let him finish, and explain what he's talking about.
Thank you, sir.
Even if you disagree with him.
Go quicker. You can't, because people are asking questions. Let him finish his talk. A lot of us came here to hear the talk. He said he'll do questions afterwards.
Thank you. Courtney, I promise you I'll call on you. You and I have known each other now for more than a year. I promise you I'll call on you. You can relax. Relax on this. God, I heard. I remember doing that in school. When are you leaving? Right now? Okay, raise your hand 10 minutes before you need to go. And I will call on you because it's that important. Okay, now, established neighborhood. How many of you saw the press release on neighborhood conservation? Okay, well, neighborhood conservation I think was a little bit misunderstood because the word conservation may be charged in a place that has beautiful trees. So what we're really talking about with what we used to call neighborhood conservation, and we haven't updated the code yet, so if you go check it out, it'll be NC, is established neighborhoods. And what this really means, how many of you live in a lot that is 5 acres or less in the unincorporated county? Okay, now, many of you might be concerned that some regulations in here might make my house illegal, or might make me not able to sell my lot, or might not allow me to expand my home, and things like that. Does anybody have that kind of concern? All right, well, that would be a legitimate concern for somebody dealing with a new code that has a lot of uncertainty in it. Rest assured that we understand, I've done real estate transactions too, so I understand that some lenders are really concerned about that as well. Okay, if that house burns down, can it be rebuilt? So what we did, and this sets us apart from all of the competition that we have in the zoning field, is we create this thing called established neighborhood, which means that the neighborhood is pretty much as it is by the type of neighborhood. And I'll get to that in a second, but the strategic point of this is that in a neighborhood conservation or now established neighborhood, that established neighborhood, the regulations will say, you're cool. Whatever you got is cool. It's legal. You're not non-conforming. You don't have to worry about being suddenly grandfathered if you're not at that age yet where you want to be a grandfather. You're not going to be a grandfather. There's no sex change operation necessary there if you're a woman who owns the property. You're not going to have to worry about it because if it's there, it's by definition legal. It's a big deal. It seems like a technical point. It's a big deal. So this code is different from the code you have now in that if you're not conforming to setbacks now, you need a variance if you want to do something. You shouldn't have to ask for a variance to fix a house that's been there for 60 years. Goodness. So we want to make it simpler. So we did, because we can. We can recommend that. And so we do, because it makes sense. How do you do zoning that makes sense? You try to say, well, what does the people reasonably want to do that when they throw their elbow, they don't hurt somebody real bad? Well, maybe they want to expand their house. Now, a house is different than a lot. Because if you want to put a new bathroom on a house, you got to figure out where the plumbing is, where the hallway is, where the rooms are in relation to that bathroom. And if that means that you need to go into your side yard, and that side yard is required to be a yard and not a house, you need a variance. But in the established neighborhood district, it says, we understand people want to do stuff like that, and if you're built from the setback on this side to the setback on this side, and you want to go over a few feet, that's cool. Put a fence there to make sure that you're not looking out your window into your neighbor's window. You're good. Now, on a 5-acre lot, it probably doesn't make a lot of difference. On a 12,000 square foot lot, it makes a fair amount of difference if you're the neighbor and somebody's poking their house out into you. So we have a few standards that are more qualitative that say, here are some pictures of what people could do that make sense. And there's no reason you should have to ask a public hearing board for an approval for something that simply makes sense. So you go to Scott, you say, here's my application, and here's why it meets the standard, and boom, you get your building permit. Fast, easy, no public hearing, no nerves, things like that. Doesn't make sense to ask for that. And we're the only consulting firm in the country that I know of that routinely says, we need to just appreciate what's there. I mean, what's there is what's been there, and what's there should be improved. People should invest in it. People should improve their homes, and make bigger homes over time, and do things that are good in terms of that. Rural commercial, you have a commercial district now. This just recognizes that it's commercial in a rural environment. You probably don't want to strip Power Mall in a place that doesn't have sewer service. Rural industrial is for, you want to promote rural industries that support farmers, but it would also accommodate a whole bunch of other industrial interests. And planned regional destination is areas like around Silverwood, around the casino, maybe others that may come up where you have a big magnet for people. And you just want to plan out, okay, well, how can we do something really neat around that big magnet? And it's got to be real flexible, so we just call it planned because the people that are there will plan it, not the county, the people that are there. The county will say, yeah, that we can put roads there with the road districts, and sewers are going to be there. Yeah, okay, so do that. That's good. That'll be good for the local economy and so forth. So we bring in a bunch of different tools to allow things that ought to be allowed, and so that an investor knows, oh, I want to bring a business from somewhere else. Where can I put that makes sense, where there's going to be other things like what I'm doing around, where we can create a critical mass of stuff that's going to benefit people. It helps to be able to look at a map from the investment side and figure that out. And so we have that in there. Now, character is about those relative quantities, and layout is about how those things fit together. Yes, ma'am?
What does with options still mean?
Okay, with options means 5-acre lots are okay, or 2-acre lots with some open space is okay, with a little bit of extra maybe. And then you could do like a hamlet or a village where you have much smaller lots and a lot more open space that you can farm, or maybe it's a hillside or a wetland, you can't really do anything with it anyway, and you want to protect it. There's a lot of subdivisions out there that offer really high quality open spaces to their residents, and they get big dollars for those things on small lots. And you'll get some interest in that. It's not your whole market. You got people that want land that they can grow trees and cut them down and stuff like that, and that's all good. There's plenty of room in here for all of the lifestyles that people want to have.
Is there animal restrictions in the plan here, as far as how many head of cattle, horses?
The state has a definition that says beyond a certain number of cows, you're a concentrated animal feeding operation.
Right, and theirs is fine. Does your plan, does it limit 4 head of cattle per 5 acres or anything like that, or?
Just to the CAFO limit, really. And I think what we've tried to do, right now it's 5 acres to have livestock. And we've been reminded, what about 4-H and stuff like that, where people want livestock on smaller lots. And we're working through this so that will be allowed without any kind of difficulty. Because that's important too. I mean, culturally, 4-H is a big deal. And 4-H shouldn't go away. I mean, that's a really big deal. And we want people to grow up to want to be farmers. Because you don't want to have to buy all your produce from China or somewhere else. We want people to grow food here. We like that. And so, I look for that when I buy produce. I want it to be grown here. And so I want people to want to be farmers. We need to have land available for farming too.
Keep going, you're going to lose it. Keep
Okay,
going.
let's get back. So here. So layout is about how the pieces come together, and we saw the comprehensive plan map in terms of large-scale layout. And then, if you put the house in the front of the 5-acre lot, and the lots are kind of narrow, then the layout of that subdivision is going to look like suburbia, even though you've got 5-acre lots. So the width of the lot is important, and we pay close attention to these issues. Large-scale patterns of layouts that are give the impression of a different character are kind of destructive to that character type, even if you look at it from the air and you would see it a different way. Because we all experience character from our own property looking out. From here, we experience a rural-ish character. And from the street, as you drive along the street, either to go home or to go to work or to go recreate or something like that. And the character of Kootenai County is way beyond aesthetics. I mean, we really need to understand and appreciate how many tourist dollars. I mean, you just getting off the Ironman. And why do people want to do the Ironman race here? It's because you can look out and see this incredible landscape. People want to be here for sports and things like that. And how much money did that generate? I'm not sure anybody calculated that yet, but I'm sure it was a fair amount of cash for the local economy. It's a good thing. So character, the green out there is about green in everybody's wallet. And about lifestyle amenities that you wouldn't have without tourist dollars in terms of good places to eat and good services and things like that. So it's really important to recognize that these are green assets in terms of water quality and air quality that you all recognize and appreciate. They're green assets in terms of dollars in your pocket, not just from logging, which is another legitimate thing to do.
Let him speak.
Can I enforce your rule against you for a few minutes? I know I got to get to Courtney in just a second, and we'll move from here.
Are you that close to being done?
I'm pretty close to. I just want to get through neighborhood conservation and landscaping. What's that?
When I mentioned that I agree with you on 0.3%, and that is the first sentence of the Declaration of Independence.
Okay, I'm with you on the first sentence. I'm also with you on all of the rest of it.
Governments are instituted among men to protect private property.
I'm not sure that's how it went, but
Hello?
Now, I agree with you. We agree. The difference lies, you want the government to try to step in and protect my private property.
I don't. Really, I want to do my job of creating a code that reflects your interests, and then I want to go home and be with my wife and kids. That's the only thing I want to do. I promise you that.
Bullshit.
That is, I can do what I want with my property, as long as I
Thank you, sir. I will. We can talk afterwards, and we will. This is just the example of one of those options. This is a village where it's a hamlet where you have some small lots on a big area, and then you have some big lots. And it's a rural thing, and you often see hamlets in rural environments around the country. And this would give somebody a pretty good opportunity to build a number of homes with not so many roads in them, and they can actually save money and sell them at a higher dollar and continue to farm. This is what we're talking about in terms of getting some options in the code. Where currently you either have to do a conservation subdivision, which would look different, or cut the whole thing up into 5-acre lots and build kind of a grid road through it to maximize the yield. This gives you a lot more potential to do something neat with the property. And we just want to make sure that the market can deliver what it wants to deliver without any kind of trouble or special approvals and things like that. Here, the built environment, like I said, for neighborhood conservation and established neighborhoods is different from the not yet built. It's easy to have a house lot and plan your house around the lot. It's much harder to plan an addition to existing house. So that's why we try to create expansion and renovation opportunities in the code that don't require variances, because really that's where you're at this point. We don't want to be in that same place. We don't want to recommend that. So we'll get through this in the interest of quickness. We created in this EN district 9 or 10 what we call sub-districts because we looked at your aerials, and you've got this established neighborhood in Mayview, and you've got this established neighborhood next to Spirit Lake. And if you were to treat them the same, it would be weird because they're very, very different places. So we cut it down. The EN district is really about single family. And so we just make sure that we're dealing with lots as we find them. And that's why we have about 9 different sort of size classes of lots in the county as we understand it, from having done a lot of review about what those lots look like. And we could adjust that here or there, but you'll notice if you take a close look that we're a lot finer grained where the lots are smaller, because a setback on a 50-foot lot compared to a 90 is a whole lot more important than a setback on a 5-acre lot versus a 2-acre lot. There's just a lot more land to deal with. Okay, so this is the table. It's kind of mind-boggling in terms of its presentation here, but these are the proposed districts. We're probably going to strike this one because it's not really needed. But these are the setback numbers that if you comply with a setback with your addition, you just get your building permit right away. If you don't, that's okay too. This is a way to just not worry about other stuff. But there are some additional, and this is the build out of a 2-acre lot, which you can see is a giant mansion. So we're not being over restrictive here in terms of what you could build. I'll never be able to afford this even if I hit the lottery. This is a very, very big house with a horse barn in the back and a 3-car garage and a bunch of pavement. And that's really what we're talking about. Build out is okay. Nobody's going to be affected by the regulations in terms of lot cover on it too. And so landscaping requirements are the next thing that I want to talk about. After landscaping, I don't really have much else in terms of the presentation, so it'll be a pretty quick one from here, like I said. Right now, you've got a landscaping code in Kootenai County that applies to non-residential stuff, and it is totally contrary to fire safety common sense. You require foundation plantings around the building that are very dense in terms of trees. And no fire expert will tell you that that's a good idea in a place that wildfires, I mean, you just celebrated the 100th anniversary of the worst wildfire in northwestern history. And so we intend to make recommendations
Haven't
to
had
change
one in
that.
100 years.
Your requirements right now are 15 feet on the sides of buildings and 25 feet in the front of the building. Needs to be densely landscaped with trees, not your homes, but your businesses and your churches and your places of assembly and things like that. 10 to 15% of the parking lot needs to be landscaped. 15-foot buffer along the roads and trees along walkways. This is what your code says now. Now, it's routinely waived because it doesn't make any sense. If I have a business in the rural landscape and it's totally covered with trees, how's anybody going to find it? So we think that needs to be changed, and so we recommended, and this is the planning message, 3 trees and 3 shrubs for 30 feet along the road. A tree every 10 feet. 1 tree per 300 square feet in other areas where landscaping is required. How many remember geometry? Pi r squared is the area of a circle. That means if the radius just in a little bit of an increment, you square that and then you multiply it by 3.14. You're talking about a huge density of trees. Here, I think this is a radius of about 8 to 9 feet, if I remember my math correctly. The canopy on a shade tree.
If I obey these requirements and a fire starts, then I can go to the county and get reimbursed?
No. No, absolutely not. Sovereign immunity. You can't.
Because that 100-year wildfire might come back
This is
around,
a
you know.
terrible rule. We are not recommending this rule. This is why we're here, is to fix it. This is crazy.
You're telling me exactly how I have to plant my trees.
I'm not telling you that. I'm telling you, right now your code says this. Your code says this. Do you really like your existing code?
Yeah.
It's wrong. It's wrong. Courtney, you need to leave.
You don't live here. Who cares?
Sir, I need to recognize Courtney.
Go ahead.
She's been an
I was
avid
at the
participant.
landscaping meeting, I spent hours and hours and hours listening to you. So I do have some experience, if you want to call it that. You have said commercial buffering needs to be reduced.
I'll
but
repeat it.
You have encouraged rural landscaping property owners being required to buffer their property from passerby. That has been your recommendation,
I know. We'll talk
against
about
what you
that.
just said.
We'll talk about that in a minute. I'll get to what we recommend.
I
Okay.
do have to leave and I have a few more.
Sure, go ahead.
Last night when you were in Bayview, you mentioned, somebody asked you about international code requirements, and you
Right.
said that has nothing to do with the United Nations or Agenda 21 or whatever.
Right.
I went to the website, the
ICC.
International Code Council, which our community development department regularly promotes with CE units, is a member of ICC, and ICC is actually in collaboration with U.S. Department of Energy and ICLEI. And ICLEI puts out Agenda 21. So you can't tell me
Here's
that
the
this
history.
isn't associated.
We really
Number
can't
two.
sidetrack to, okay, go
No,
ahead.
it's not a side-tie.
All right, I'll address it. Go ahead.
If we are, if this is forced upon us, thank goodness for established neighborhoods.
Great,
However,
thank you.
the whole gist of,
Here's what she said.
no, I
She
know
said that we're recommending
this is why-
buffering. She said that the international codes, which are the building codes, are related through, I think, 2 hops to the United Nations. And she said that, what was the last thing? Thank God for established neighborhoods, and we're going to have to accept this proposal. And then what was the last thing you wanted to say?
The issue is comprehensive plans and ULUCs are not grassroots. These have come from a higher organization that is not compatible with the United States Constitution.
Okay, she believes that.
Amen.
Not compatible with the
Amen.
I'm getting paid to make this presentation. I have to get through it, or I'm going to be in trouble.
No, you don't.
Courtney, please. You've made
Are they
4
gonna
points,
fire
and we'll have to address, I think, only one of them,
It's
because the
great.
rest of them, I think, are my personal perspective, and I'm going to respect you on that. The international building codes, there were 3 building code organizations in the country. They're all nonprofits. The Southern Standard, which we used to use down in Florida. There's one called DOCA, which is sort of Midwestern. I forget the name of the other one. All American engineers developing building codes to encourage life safety. They all got together and became International Code Council. They call it that, I'm sure, because they charge a whole lot of money for those codes, and those codes are adopted in almost every jurisdiction in 50 states. So, because of that, and because of the history of that, where else are they going to sell those documents to? You know, they're going to go international like everyone else. Ford sells cars all over the world. So I believe that even if they're related to that, they're doing it for marketing. Those guys are selling codes all over the world. They're all Americans. They're headquartered in Washington, D.C. I'm not here to defend them. I'm just telling you that's reality. We've been dealing with Southern Standard in Florida for years, and we adopted the Florida Building Code. You've got the same issue here to do an international code. Building codes are a good idea, and if you review the building code for its content, that's what you ought to be concerned about. Let's move forward to this landscaping here, buildings and architecture. We're not recommending any architectural design standards whatsoever in Kootenai County, and KKC recommends keeping your historic preservation stuff in place. You have a very limited historic preservation. It's all voluntary, and if you have this, how many have a historic property, like a designated historic property? You can get federal tax credits for getting that designation, for doing an adaptive reuse of your building. And so the county should help people get tax credits for that, and that's why we're recommending keeping that. With respect to where all of this comes from, the legislature in Kootenai County decided 40 years ago almost that planning and zoning were a good idea. That was before all of this talk about Agenda 21. You've been doing it all along. Your codes are hopelessly broken now, hopelessly broken, confusing, causing distrust. If people think that the landscape of Kootenai County right now, barring new development, is a result of zoning, that would be an incorrect assumption. It was a result of markets until a certain point. The stuff that you didn't like that happened in the landscape, and I'm sure each of you has a project that you think was a bad idea, happened during the boom where zoning was no longer a check on what that development would look like because it was too permissive or it was wrongly applied because it was too confusing. So you've got in your rural landscape now, how many know your rural zoning district of your existing code? Take a look at it. Download it from your Community Development Department's website. And just look at the part of your zoning ordinance that talks about your rural zoning district. And look at the uses that are allowed there by conditional use permit. And it will alarm you at what you can put next to the farm. And even if you think anybody ought to do anything that they want, some of those uses are something that throw big elbows. And when they hit a farmer in the gut, the farmer's going to feel it. Because a racetrack, a NASCAR track, for example, next to a farm, could be a pretty big deal if you're raising cows. Okay? And those are the sorts of things that are potentially permissible. And what are the standards? It's in the public interest and consistent with the comprehensive plan, which you can get through the plan amendment.
Yeah, because there's so many NASCAR fans in North Idaho.
Those standards are
Not.
not standards. We're looking for standards that make sense. Things that people can understand. Things that people help us figure out. And that's why we come to meetings all over the county. And that's why we're here tonight to explain to you what it is that we're actually trying to do. And then to get your feedback in terms of what things concern you so that we can put things in the code that make sense. Now, I want to tell you that this afternoon and yesterday, we spent a tremendous amount of time figuring out, because we got some early criticism. I think, Mr. Regan, you were part of this. You were telling us, you ought to not tell people what they can do and assume they can't do anything that you told them nothing about. So in other words, your silence shouldn't be a prohibition in a zoning code. And we don't necessarily disagree with that as a fundamental. The trick is, how do you develop a set of laws that flips the image to negative instead of positive? Because the way that law works, it generally doesn't do that except in the criminal law. And zoning law is civil law, so it's kind of challenging. You have to describe the landscape. And so you have to describe what's applicable and what's not. And so what we're trying to do in relation to the challenge, because I think it was a good one, is figure out what are the contours of what should not be addressed by the code. And specifically say that. There's a whole bunch of range of impacts that the county's not going to worry about. Where the elbow comes in and you feel it like you're doing light contact sparring and it's all good, everybody understands they're going to get a little knock now and then, and that they're allowed to deliver one in return. So it's not kumbaya by any stretch. It's, we're going to kind of do what we want. We're free-spirited and independent-minded. But there are certain limits to it. And we described an extreme example here because we try to be funny from time to time. Sometimes it flops, but I'll apologize for that in advance. But there are examples that you probably know about where you go, that really should not have happened in the unincorporated county. And how many have seen that? Regardless of what your perspective, you could put your perspective aside for a second and say, something just really rotten happened out there. Somebody either made a big mistake with their private investment, or really the county shouldn't have allowed that. I don't really care what your rationale is, and I'm not going to put you on the spot. But I assure you, most of you probably have that project that you hate. Is that a fair statement? Okay, so now the county has land use authority. The county is required by the state to exercise that authority. We're just trying to make it make sense. And you can do that by working with as many people as possible to make it make sense. And I assure you, between Ms. Southwell and Courtney, Mr. Regan, we are constantly reminded that there are bounds to where government should go. And we appreciate those reminders because we're really not have any other, I hate to even use the word agenda anymore because it's so toxic. I don't really have time to look at what the UN is doing. I do hear that down in Brazil recently, they did a terrible job in what they're doing. So, well, I guess what I'm saying is, the only thing I care about to get my next paycheck and to feed my kids and to pay my mortgage is client service. And client service means I'm listening to what you guys want and giving you a document back that you can look at it and say, if we're not completely upset, and some people will be completely upset, that's how it works. But if we're generally speaking, we kind of got something that reflects who it is that we are. And when people come in with dollars from California and they want to mess with this environment, they understand who we are and they develop sort of in that way to respect who we are. And when they want to come in from Florida, New York, or somewhere else and say, you know what, we're going to do this big project in northern Idaho, well, darn it, it'll be a northern Idaho project. It won't matter where that capital comes from because it'll reflect the code that northern Idaho developed for itself. This is a reflection of who you are. And if who you are is, darn it, I'm going to do anything I want with my property, then that's who you are, and we'll work through that. But we think that on whole, we've got representation across a broad spectrum, and somehow we're going to have to figure it out. That's the hard work that we do. That's why we come in as consultants. That's why this job is really, really hard.
So when can we ask you questions?
Like me, I gave you my history and credentials. It's really, really hard because I take it seriously.
Can we go to the questions, please?
Questions.
Questions.
The Idaho code, the land use code of 67-6500 that was enacted in 1975 was revised in 1995 and it added specific prohibitions about what the government can and can't do with regard to property rights. Specifically, it said that they were to protect property rights and not adversely affect property rights. Right. Now, since that time, you said that your interpretation of it is that doesn't apply here. So how is it that the law that was enacted that you're using and it was then modified, these specific protections on property rights were added? How is it now you can ignore them?
There are property rights means a lot of things to a lot of people. And when lawyers write laws...
Seriously? Seriously?
This is a really, really important point, so you have to bear with me. The answer isn't yay or nay.
Yeah, why not?
What this boils down to is the property rights of the legislature... Sir, please, I will answer the question. I will answer it concisely, sir.
Just like the idiots that introduced the rule.
Property rights are a technically recognizable set of actual rights. And they're different from the spirit that I should be able to do anything I want with my property. It's different. It's legally different. And when the legislature protects property rights, they are protecting existing rights. Your home, your right to possession, your right to exclude others, your right to devise your property to your children in a will, your right to a development approval that once it's approved, that people won't take it away from you, your right to have the rules consistently applied to you. All of these are actually legally recognizable property rights that I have litigated each and every one of these rights. Now, the right to do anything you want with your property has never been recognized by the Supreme Court as an individual property right. That does not mean that we shouldn't take that into account. And like I said, you throw your elbows a pretty far distance, and that's okay in Kootenai County, and we'll try to accommodate that and account for that in a code that's specific to Kootenai County. This is very important. The property rights issues in
The
Kootenai...
language here specifically that I'm referring to, because you're going afield on this.
It's really not.
Is that, no, here's the language, I'll read it out verbatim.
Property rights in the legislature will be protected under this code in many ways. Article 1 provides the property rights protection provisions in the code. Take a look at Chapter 1. The other thing that you should take a look at is kccode.com. We've addressed property rights comprehensively on the front page of kccode.com. I appreciate the question, Mr. Regan. Planning is another issue.
He wasn't done.
Let him finish. Let me read this specifically so you can address it.
Thanks, sir.
It was revised in 1995 to require that planners ensure that land use policies, restrictions, conditions, and fees do not violate private property rights, adversely impact property values, or create unnecessary technical limitations on the use of property.
doesn't the county have to be compliant to the Idaho code?
Amen.
Yes, sir, it does.
But that doesn't, they didn't say we had to write a code, they just said we had to do a review. Nothing on the paper is okay, and we've complied with the law. I've read the law, and I've read his plan. And he brought up the point between the difference between civil law and criminal law. Civil law is rules we make for ourselves. If we as a group decide that we don't want a plan, period, in any way, shape, or form, then our elected officials should respect our wishes. And
Mr. Regan has provided one citation to Idaho law. The rest of Idaho law and the Local Land Use Planning Act says that cities and counties shall create a comprehensive plan and then shall create zoning in accordance with the comprehensive plan.
yeah, well, a plan can have nothing in it, and they say we can let you do whatever you want. That's a plan.
There is judges believe differently, I think, when they litigate this.
They can
Sir.
replace it.
Mr. Messenger?
Yes, sir.
I'd like to ask, I mean, I've been through a bunch of these meetings, and I've asked you this, but we've never gone and got that beer after the meeting where we
We
talked
should
about
do that.
it.
We could do that tonight.
Yeah, we talked about that. The point of the matter is that if we are going to create a code, it is very simple to be compliant by saying and creating a, like I said before, a zone E, everything goes. And a zone, or if you don't like that, a zone A, anything goes. Allow the person to have it, it's documented, it's proven, it's written into the code, and everybody will have their private property right upheld.
We actually got a
And it'd be
legal opinion
codified.
on that. We do have a legal opinion
Do
on
they live
that.
here?
From the county attorney.
Oh.
Yeah.
Which county attorney?
From your county attorney.
Barry McHugh?
No, no.
That's the prosecuting attorney.
So it's my understanding that we can't do that. So
We can't do that?
According to who?
we have a legal opinion on that from the county's attorney. Now, I can't practice law in Idaho, but I can work with attorneys. I know how they think and how they work, and I'm pretty good at that. Now, what I can say, you know, in this environment, come to me afterwards. I'm not going to put his name on the microphone. I don't think that's fair. He's not here to talk to it.
Why not?
I don't know.
Is he an elected official?
Yeah, is he
Pat
elected?
Braden is the county attorney who's responsible for this, and not to put a Pat on the spot when he's not here. I don't think it's fair.
If he's an elected official, it doesn't matter.
I think Pat will speak for himself when he gets that opportunity if he's called upon to do so. I don't want to put Pat on the spot. It's not my role today. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I really actually appreciate it. Before you raise your hand, I'll call you next, sir. I don't want anybody to have to be tired of holding their hand up. What I'm talking about is in established neighborhoods, if you live in an established home, you can kind of do what you're doing now and then some. We want to remove a lot of the unnecessary stuff. I think, you know, if the statutes say, don't be unnecessarily complicated, you're really unnecessarily complicated now just to do simple things in the existing code. I promise you this is very hard work. I think you can tell the commitment from Jeff. Now, with respect to what you're doing.
We have a person from this county doing that work rather than somebody from Florida, Colorado, maybe even LA. We don't know.
We don't have any offices in LA.
Why there isn't somebody taking our tax dollars and putting them in their pocket that live in this county and know the people in this county, not somebody from Florida and not somebody from Colorado, just because they have a big name.
I wasn't aware of my celebrity status. Let me just say that we went through a very competitive process, and we earned the work, and we're very, very humbled by that and grateful to be here to help you. What we want to make sure, and what makes the difference, I think, what we want to make sure and what we think makes the difference in the work that we do is that we have meetings like this, we have an advisory committee that's broadly representative, we have a technical committee, we work with the policymakers and the staff, And we try to gather up all the
Only needs
information
between
that we
9 a.m. and 5
can
a.m.
and put it down in a way that represents what we heard. And then we say, did we get it right? And then we say again when we redo it, did we get it right? And we iterate it again and again and again to make sure we get it right. Now that's really hard work, but I can promise you that it doesn't really matter whether you live here or not when you have that level of involvement from your public officials, from your neighbors, and from your staff, because they can help in terms of making sure that the thing is tailored to the place. We don't have any formula for this. If we did, we would be done by now. I promise you we'd be done by now. But we don't have a formula for this. What we try to do is figure out who is the community and then work from there.
Answer the
Yes, sir. I promise
question.
you I call on you next.
I have a couple of comments and questions.
Sure.
You mentioned that you questioned a lot of people before you put all of this together.
Yes, sir, we did.
How many people in the room were questioned about what we're hearing tonight? Not me. No. What about the out-of-town people who own property here in Kootenai County that have never been questioned, and I know a lot of them? What are you doing about letting them know what's happening?
We are trying to reach out as much as we can. I think tonight is one of those events. We have done email blasts and living.
No, you
reviews
haven't.
with Lakeshore owners and upland property owners and all kinds of
Property
folks.
here that don't live here, and there are a lot of people who own property here in Kootenai County.
Correct. And we're here in the summertime and we're here in the wintertime and we're reaching out to as many people as we can.
They live in California, Texas, maybe even Florida.
I don't live in Florida anymore.
I know you don't.
Fair enough. I agree.
Sorry, that's really funny.
Where there are people who are being affected by what you're proposing tonight, which incidentally, I was told that you could schmooze a pit bull.
I have been called a lot of nice things and a lot of bad things. I'm really not all that. Ask my wife.
I don't think we have any substance here in what you said tonight, so that anybody in this room who was never contacted about the contents of what's in your plan, or all of a sudden, why do you think so many people are here tonight, and when you come back in 6 weeks, you will be able to put all the people in this room that are gonna be here? Why do you think the people are here tonight?
I think there were some email blasts that suggested that.
No.
I think that we have a very civically involved public in Kootenai County. I think that's great. I think that's great.
It's growing. All these people never knew what was being proposed, and the gentleman right here is right. And around the room, there are people who have told the truth about why we shouldn't be doing this at this point.
Sir, I understand
Good.
the concerns.
Are the commissioners here tonight?
Yes, ma'am.
Are the commissioners here?
Yes, sir.
You mentioned TDRs
Tondi is?
in
Where
the
is he?
earlier presentation you put on.
Long time ago, I think we brought up TDRs as being something that was
Is
in the
that something
comprehensive
you
plan.
still consider?
We have sort of not explored that any further at this
Because I
point.
was doing some reading, and your boss, Mr. Lane Kendig, he was mentioning some stuff in Boulder where they also did the same thing for McMansions, the throttle back on the size of them. So if the person would build a little house, they get a TDR, and they could sell it to somebody who wanted to do a McMansion.
I'm not aware of our involvement in that project. That was before I was
Lane
with permit at all.
Kendig, I think you're aware of, yeah.
Lane has a book about that. He might have been referring to somebody else's work.
He's actually the past president. He wrote.
Oh, I know Lane
I'm
well.
just curious why you threw that out to us, when in 2010, he did a paper that TDRs were an unfeasible prospect, that it was very difficult to build a market for them, that the county would build. I'm wondering if you're just throwing these kind of things out to pacify us as we go along.
Oh, no, we wouldn't think that
Why
TDRs.
did you say that?
TDRs are in your comprehensive plan. They're mentioned in your
They are,
comprehensive
but
plan.
why did Lane Kendig say that, 2 years ago?
Here, let me address what TDRs are, because I'm getting that question, and then I'll address the issue of the complexity of it. Property rights are, the law has for many centuries recognized them as what they would call a bundle of sticks, which means I have the right to use my property, I have the right to exclude others. These are things that you can actually sell off independently. So you have an easement, anybody have an access easement across, or an oil and gas easement or something like that? An easement is giving somebody else a property right in your rights of your, what they call bundle of sticks. So property is severable. Your mineral rights might not be yours. Does anybody have mineral rights that belong to somebody else? I do. I mean, that's pretty common in the West. Does anybody know? Have you looked at your title reports? Many of you probably don't control what's beneath your house because somebody else got that a long time ago, usually a railroad. So property rights are this bundle of things, and so you could sell, if you had a right to develop, and there were a market to sell your right to develop, you could take that right and sell it to somebody else, and they could do it somewhere else. That's what we call a transfer of development rights, or TDR. There are some places that have used TDR so that farmers could sell a speculative subdivision without actually doing it, so that they could actually build those buildings somewhere else. TDRs are really complicated, and they require a lot of calibration and banking and administrative and everything else. So your plan flirts with this idea of TDR, because on its face it looks like, hey, that's a pretty cool thing that could be done, where farmers could get paid and we could do development in places that make more sense than on the farm. And it's a private transaction, so farmers don't have to do it if they don't want to. So it's kind of neat. Conceptually, it's kind of neat. The reality is that Lane and another guy I used to work for, Charlie Seaman, are the only two guys that I know of who have actually been successful in a couple of jurisdictions. We have these programs all over the United States, but unless you really work really hard on it and then have a pretty good administration and some funding to make that work, it's real hard to actually make it work. So we brought it up because it was in the plan. And we dispensed with it rather quickly because we don't think we have the infrastructure, the demand, or the will to pursue a strategy like that, because it's so complicated and because it requires really high land values in the receiving areas to make it worth buying it in the first place. It requires markets that want more dense products than probably you would be selling here, and we just didn't think it was a good idea for Kootenai County. There's no universal prescription, but we wanted to make sure you understand, and that's why Lane wrote that, is because in most places where we have TDR, it doesn't work. It just doesn't work. In Lake Tahoe, in the New Jersey Pinelands, there are some successful programs, but it doesn't work everywhere. Yes?
What about when you have, like, we live on 5 acres, which is and has a homeowners association. A lot of people are in homeowners association right now. Do these plans say, okay, I don't care what your homeowners association said, you're gonna do what this plan says? Because when we bought, our homeowners association was a very, it didn't demand a lot from a person. Some things yes and a lot of things no, which I want to keep. But I do not want someone coming in and saying, okay, I don't care what your homeowners association says, you're gonna do it my way or no way.
Right. If you're in an established neighborhood, which if you have an HOA, the chances are you are, and if you live in the unincorporated county, I would, and I'm not a betting man, I would put a significant bet on that you would actually be better off. Most of your relations in terms of doing things in your house would be between you and your HOA and not between you, under the proposed thing. The county has no interest in getting involved in neighbor-neighbor HOA issues at all. That's just not a place where a county wants to be. You've got hundreds of square miles in the county. You do not want to be involved in HOAs to the extent other than to say, if you're making a new subdivision and it has something that needs to be maintained, you got to have an HOA. But that would be it. You know, as a developer, you figure out how to do that because the county's not going to be able to do that. It doesn't have people to do that. You're not going to pay taxes from your property so somebody else's open space can be maintained. I don't think anybody has an appetite for that.
Not
if you
yet.
do, let me know, but I don't think you do.
Not yet.
No, we have no
Not yet.
intention.
I
We have
lived in
never recommended
Boulder
that, and I
County.
frankly never will. Yes, sir.
I lived in Boulder County, Colorado for
Oh, really?
15 years. And people came in from the outside with an agenda on slow growth, no growth, comprehensive plan. They destroyed that city.
I agree with you.
They destroyed it. It was people from the outside, they wouldn't let the locals have a voice.
I agree with you.
It was agenda-driven from outsiders who had their comprehensive plan, and they wanted us to fund it with our tax dollars.
This will
So
surprise
I
many of
would
you.
warn you all, beware.
This will surprise many of you, but I agree with you. I disagree with you. Don't beware of me. Most municipalities won't go there. Boulder's a special case, and I spend a lot of time at conferences.
Boulder is a mental case. So why do you look like a camel?
A camel? You mean doing this? I spend too much time hunched over. Oh, come on. Come on now. It's not like that. I'm just a technical.
I have a short
I
question, I
really, I'm
swear.
not
It's
an
yes or
ideological
no.
guy. I can't afford to be an ideological guy. I work in diverse places all over the country. I'm a professional guy. What I'm interested in, like I said, is writing your story as regulations. What does it mean? Now, wait, Boulder is a special case. It's crazy.
You have mentioned several times tonight that you're here for our views and our opinions.
I am.
And yet every time we give you a view or an opinion, you shoot it down or come up with some other legal ramification that says that can't work. That's not what you're telling us. What you're saying and what you're doing are two different things.
You have an
You're
agenda.
being a hypocrite.
That the advisory committees and whatever are rigged with special interests already and have narrow focus. What is the mechanism, a real mechanism, for individuals to input to this process to have a real change? For example, you have 5-acre parcels and you go to 1/3 acre parcels. 5 acres you can have animals, 1/3 acres you can't. Someone mentioned at the moment you can have animals on 1 acre. 1 acre just somehow disappeared from the process. How do we address these individual concerns in a way where they will actually be not only input, but effective in the draft? And what's the process for actual approval by the populace of the draft before it's ever implemented?
Great. Those are two very good questions. Let me apologize for engaging in the sparring and say that really when we talk about what it means to be meaningfully involved in the code, we really do need to be more specific than, you consultants shouldn't be here and this and that. And so I will stop engaging in the sparring and we'll start engaging in the constructive activity. My apologies for that. Now,
Answer the question.
with respect to how do you contribute to the process, if you go to kccode.com, you can send a message that I will get by email if you have general comments, and you can send it to Scott. His email address is up there. Scott shares with me. All this stuff is public record, so we want to make sure it goes to Scott first. He'll forward everything to me, which he does. And you can go online to the code draft itself if you want to get real technical. And you can click on comments on the sidebar there and leave your comments on individual sections. Now, some of you have already done this. The comments will show up under the section where the comments are, and then when we can, we'll respond. Now, it takes a lot of energy to write a code, and so I'm going to tell you, I'm going to just apologize to you in advance again, that we don't respond in real time. I mean, we are not Google. We can't just say, okay, here's the answer, or Siri from the Apple iPhone. We can't just say, okay, here's the answer, I found it for you. We have to often work through difficult problems in order to answer your questions like that. And so we sometimes have questions that have been around for a few months, where we don't answer them until we can, and we're still working through procedures that will help us answer those. So if you see something lingering, we will answer all the questions before we're done. And we just need some patience in the process because it's a hard process to do. So I appreciate that. kccode.com, email Scott with the general stuff. Go to the code drafts itself and leave us comments for the specific stuff if you want to be involved in the development of the code itself.
Do the other cities and other interest groups and developers and all those guys, do they also have to send emails to you and wait for a response, or do they actually have committees that they can sit on and get direct input and have actual power?
A little of both, and the actual power thing is in the hands of the whole community. Now, Mr. Reed, respectfully, everybody else is raising their hand and getting tired. So the shout-outs, I can't answer anymore from you or anyone else. I'm going to go pick people that are polite enough to raise their hand. Yes, ma'am. Oh, the process, I'm sorry, I forgot that. The process of adoption is it's a zoning process. It's in Title 67 of the code. It basically requires the planning and zoning to review it and make a recommendation, and then for the Board of County Commissioners to pass an ordinance. We're working through notice on that and how the notice needs to go, because the statute doesn't require much, and we think that probably it should require a little more. And we're trying to figure out how does the county allocate resources to provide a good notice. And so we want to make sure that people understand, what's coming and how they can be involved in it and how they can work with it and how they can participate in hearings. That's all very important. The county commission on this one has been nothing less than as transparent as they possibly can be. And what's really difficult, no, listen, I have worked in jurisdictions all across the country.
are just.
I have worked in jurisdictions all across the country. They record their meetings. They don't meet offline. They're very, very concerned about making sure that everything is on record, and they're very, very good about it. Here's what you need to know. You can get that stuff. I mean, if you're really interested in following history, and we post on the website, all the documentation. We encourage you to read. We have a library section on kccode.com. So they really have been very concerned about notice and all that stuff. Now, we didn't get the notice, sure. I don't get all the notices in my community either. And it's not an excuse to say, well, you should have got the notice. But it's really, really hard to reach people, and we're glad that you were reached, and perhaps you can leave us a comment card here to tell us how you were reached so we can reach you again. Because we want to make sure that we're involving people in this process. And when I say we, that's our charge as consultants, but it's also our charge because the county commissioners have directed us to make this a process that's very public. So we appreciate that you're all here tonight. And we know it's a little competitive. There is no provision in Idaho law for a referendum on it, as far as I know. Wait, we got over here, I promised that I wouldn't do shout outs. Yes, ma'am. You've been up for a long time. Yes, ma'am.
I do appreciate that. I'm sure that there has been some attempt at notice. However, it has been sorely insufficient. And as you can see, word has gone out, and people are responding, and we do need to work towards that. And we do have a horrible code. It is broken. I agree with that. However, what I'm seeing here tonight with just the brief little bit that we have shown is that, you're planning something, or you're considering something that's much more restrictive than any of us are used to dealing with, even though some of what we've had to deal with is restrictive because it is broken. Now, I'm hearing you, this is what I'm hearing. This is my personal what I'm hearing. What I'm not hearing is how do we fix it? I'm not hearing anybody in this room agreeing with fixing the way you're saying with being more restrictive. I don't think anybody wants to be more restrictive. So I'd like to know what you're hearing from this group and how we go forward involving the people who want to get involved, and obviously there are a lot of people here who want to get involved. So how do we do that with committees, you mentioned something about an advisory board. I heard something about the website. Okay, that's fine, but not everybody has computers. So what do we do?
Okay, great. Those are great questions, and we really appreciate how constructive those questions are. With respect to how we see the code as more or less restrictive, it's a big, complicated document now, and it's going to be a big document. The way we simplify it is we make it unified. We put all the rules in one place so we can see how they relate to each other. That's what all a unified code is. It says if you're a developer and you want to know what the rules are, they're all in one place. They're not all in one place now. So that's the first part. We make it easier to use is the deal. That's what we're really trying to do. How do you get involved is a good question, and one that I want to ask back at you, because all of you are here as a result of potentially email blasts or blogs or things that the county has or other things, word of mouth. How is it that you found out about this?
Answer the question.
No. Okay. No, it's all good. I'm just trying to figure it out. We are aware that there was some email blasts because some people that are involved in the process got them and said there's some email blasts. So that's good. We want to know about that. How else can we best get in touch with you? Because we want to. Yes, ma'am.
You didn't answer the other lady's question.
We'd like to.
Some can sign up with their email addresses if you have papers that can be by the board. Some can sign up with their postal address, so you can send them postcards to them.
And we will.
And then put regular notices in the newspaper. But you've got to make it because half this room have no idea that these meetings have been going on.
Sure, the county does the press releases and the newspaper articles and the notice like that. But to the extent that we can get your names and addresses on a sign-in sheet, we will do that and include you on this. And the county wants to do that. I don't think there's any reason the county would say no to that. Sorry.
You know, they already have our names and addresses on the records already. They can mail each and every property owner, and that property already has it on
Right.
Okay, now, next, you're gonna put together and draft a document on our behalf, okay? Will we have a time to sit down and review that and, voice our opinions and make changes to it prior to the, the commissioners making a final judgment on it?
Yes. Okay.
And how will that happen?
One day?
No. We need to have a period.
Why are
You know, when you
5
make
acre
a
lots
pot,
not
you don't
allowed?
wanna dig into it right away, right? Maybe less 30 days. We need to have the chance to look at it. So when we finish it.
Is that what she wrote?
So,
Why are 5 acre?
okay, how many people do not have internet access? And that's all good. I just need to have some idea, because I understand not everybody does, and that's all good. And sometimes I wish I did. Okay, so we have some representation. So what we need to do is figure out in the communities that are underserved by internet, or the people that simply choose to have a better life without the internet, which I think is a good thing, that will have physical documents in places where you can get to them and leave comments in the old-fashioned way, and that's a good thing. So we will try to create a space for physical documents to do that. And the rest of you, there is a great way to provide feedback over the internet that I'll show you in a couple minutes here to make sure that you have the opportunity to provide feedback in whatever way is convenient for you.
How about a public forum? That way you can.
Yeah, there will be hearings and things like that as well. And we'll have the advisory committee, will meet again to go over the mapping stuff that has to be done to finish the stuff. And they'll meet to make a recommendation, and there will be opportunities left. The advisory committee is what, about 17 or 18 people with a bunch of different perspectives, from development to farming to resident, etc. People that have been involved in the Planning and Zoning Commission, people who have not, county commissioners, people from cities, all kinds of people on the advisory committee.
That list of people on kccode.com.
I'm not sure.
No, it's not.
Honestly, I'm not sure, but we could probably. It's a public record.
Yeah, Nancy Pelosi says we should vote for the bill first and then read
We hope to be polishing up the code itself based on the meetings we've had within the next probably 6 to 8 weeks for a draft. It's pretty complicated stuff. We've been working on it all along, and you can see and comment on the stuff we've done to date now. So it's not like there's nothing that you can review. You can get started, and we encourage you to do so. But to put this thing together and finish it, because we don't write these things in advance, it's a hard job. So we're working through those things, and we'll have it complete to review, and then there will be hearings on it where you can share your opinions.
Todd, right here.
One of the things that you're facing, and you probably feel it in this room, is lack of trust.
Yes, sir.
And the reason you have that lack of trust, I'll give you an example. I know Coeur d'Alene doesn't affect you because it's a city, and this is a county comprehensive plan. But they just designed a McEwen project that's going to cost $26 to $30 million. And the people there wanted to have a vote on it before the city council went ahead with it. They said, no, you elected us, we're going to do it. And pardon?
Sure.
And that's, yeah.
I understand.
And that seems to be the tendency, that people walk all over each other and don't listen. And these people here are passionate about their land rights. I'm one of them. And I guarantee you.
I want to vote on it. Me. I vote for it.
And we need these codes written, maybe like they do for voting pamphlets years ago, where they have the law and then they have the explanation. And not legally.
Sure.
So we can have a say.
We will.
Because it's us that's affected, not the county commissioners.
Right, and I understand that. I think you make a very, very good point. It's a very good point. When we make this presentation, and it seems like it's just not enough in terms of substance, we have to just try to figure out how we summarize very complex stuff. In the code itself, we'll try to make things as English as possible. I was never a fan of legalese, and I don't like to write that way. There are some aspects to a land development code that are necessarily technical, and we'll try to provide enough introductory text to make it accessible. We think that's important. We agree with you.
Okay, Bunny's next.
The last time I checked, this is Sylvia, and I live
state of America.
Thank God.
We haven't relinquished it yet, okay?
Thank
When
God.
I see, I briefly read over some of these documents, and when I see the United Nations on something like this, I get very, very concerned.
Where we have not circulated any official documents tonight.
There are informed issues here about what really is going on. And when one gentleman said, we are distrustful, and I think we have a right to be as American citizens.
I think healthy skepticism is a healthy American trait. I'm with you on that. I can promise you I don't work for the United Nations, and my agenda is to do a good job so I can work throughout the rest of my life. Yes, sir.
I think the problem is, if you want to simplify things, you need less. You don't need them in the special places. I think Mr. Reagan, in the paper the other day, listed some points. There was like 6 of them. One of them we touched on, but I'd like to find out your position on his points, basically, about, it just seems simple. Proper review of the proposed code by the Committee of Landowners to ensure, that there's some that legally mandated rights are observed, and revise and simplify, really simplify stuff, because the more complicated it gets, the worse it gets.
Sure.
Have a group of us that represent individual landowners, representing not just special interests. And basically, you had about 6 points, and I want to know your position on what do you feel about Mr. Reagan's suggestions? They seem to make sense to me.
Yeah, I haven't memorized the article, but I could do those points one by one. I think one of the issues is, and I'm not here to, I can't adopt this code. And the success of this project, which is funded by Kootenai County, depends on doing a good job. So, right, your county commissioners know that they work for the residents of Here's the thing.
Yeah, I did agree.
Here's the thing. You have a republic. You had elections recently. So here we are.
It's not a democracy,
What I'm
it's a
saying
republic.
is, I'm hired to do a job. I have a very specific scope of work. I am not a dictator because I have no power other than to make a suggestion. The process is your process. I'm very serious about this. Contribute to the process. You now know about it to the extent that you didn't know about it before. We're sorry that the word got out to you in the way that it did now. We tried to do this. In every place we work, public participation is a very hard thing to generate. Zoning codes are very boring, and as you read this, I encourage you to have a cup of coffee next to you, because it's really important to be able to get through it. It's boring stuff. It's not John Grisham. It's just boring stuff. But it's important stuff, and you ought to take a close look at it and let us know what you think. But there is a lot more heat than light has been cast on this project, I think. And really, the personal attacks are unwarranted. We're just professionals here to try to do the job we've been hired to do. Let me get your question, and I'll address some of these points, but I want to make sure people get heard.
My question is, if you and the others with you who are doing this hard work for me and the other landowners here, then why are you trying to pass something that restricts our property rights, restricts our ability, the constitutional rights that we have as American citizens? It is not up to you to take away those rights by saying we're doing the hard work for you when you're not. What you're doing is you are patting your pocket, doing your job, doing this hard work, making it as complicated as possible to keep your job and keep your status.
No, I don't get to keep my job as complicated as possible.
To tell us what to do with our property rights. It is not up to you. It is up to us. If you work for us, stop what you are doing, listen to what we are saying, and change what you are doing, because what you're doing is not what we want.
Amen.
There are 130,000-ish people in this county. Very passionate people. Yes, sir.
I would rather see my tax dollars spent on
That's right. It's not perfect.
Set up on an optional county by county basis, and then the county commissioners wanted to proceed and it was time for the ballot box. They couldn't hide behind the fact that this is
if you want to go to Boise and lobby for that, that's your constitutional right as an American to lobby your legislature.
Taxpayer, my $300,000 or $400,000 spent here, I would rather see big time repeal this state law than proceeding in this manner.
Wasn't my choice. I competed for work that I thought would be very interesting to do. I can appreciate your position. I can
This
appreciate
guy's
your
had his
position.
hand up
We
a
have
long
contract that
time.
we're trying to do, and we're trying to do the best job in service to our client. And our client is a government that represents 130,000 people. The government is people you elect, they're your neighbors, that government. I got beefs with Congress, but my city council I can talk to at the grocery store. You know, and your county commissioners will hear you when you talk to them. It's very unlike, you can't go to the White House and get the president's ear. You can't go to the halls of Congress and get their ear unless you got a big pocketbook.
You
live
say
in a
you
place
hear
where
us,
your
but you're not
legislation-
changing what you're doing, so you're not listening. You can hear somebody, but if you're not listening, it won't matter.
Certainly.
If I could suggest to you an action item, you're going to hear from the commissioners and report back to them and say, boy, it was a rowdy bunch. And they're going to say, yeah, we have rowdies. And so we want more than an action item that contains that little bit of dialogue.
Sure.
The county gets a hold of us every year when our taxes are due, and they have no problem getting a hold of us. Right? Anybody have a problem? Yeah. So we don't buy when you said they've done everything they can, we've done the best job we could. We know that's not true because the best job occurs when our taxes are due. We hear from them. No problem. So, and then you've also said that this doesn't apply to the cities and incorporated areas.
Right.
So we're taking out a huge amount of the population.
71%.
If you could take back the action item that before anything else happens, all of us who are in the county who this is going to apply to are now getting a postcard that says, just like for our taxes, and says, hey, we're about to lay this on you guys. Because I found out about this 3 hours ago from somebody else that found out a few hours ago.
Sure.
And so if this has been going on, it's just missing all of us.
Years.
And yet it never misses when our taxes are due, you know? So it's easy to get a hold of us. And the county could incorporate email addresses into the database. They have all these layers that track everything that there is to track about our property and what we're doing on it. And so they could notify us, and that's what we're asking to be, is part of the loop. And if you can take that back and say, you need to, and I wish somebody here tonight who's got a notepad.
We do. We have notepad and pencils. And if you want to sign in here,
would collect all of the email addresses and phone numbers just for the group so we can, because I think we do need to turn this around, which is not good news for you and all the work that you've done so far. But it affects us. We own the property that this is gonna, we don't live in the city. We're the county people that this is gonna hit. And I used to live in another state where this comp plan business came in and it crushed everything. It went from permitting, in a few days to taking 12 weeks.
But you're not permitting in a few days now in Kootenai County.
Well,
it doesn't work like that.
That's what we want to fix that too.
Yeah, we want to fix that too.
Yeah.
We're with you on that.
And that's a lot with the codes and so on. But right now, what we're saying is communicate to us. And so if you can make sure that happens before anything else occurs, because you say you want to hear from us, the commissioners say they want to hear from us. Well, we didn't hear nothing, and now we're here.
There are commissioners here tonight. The message is already delivered. Okay. And we have a sheet right here, and we would like you to sign in, because we'll do that. That's easy enough to do. Commissioner, okay, we got a Commissioner Green.
Ladies and gentlemen, some people have asked where are the commissioners. I'm here. Chairman Hahn is here. Commissioner
Yay!
Jay Hussey is here.
Thank you for coming.
Dan Green. Yeah, that's okay. Welcome your comments. I'm very accessible.
Are you guys worried what's going on? Are you? You're taking my money that I pay for taxes and use it against me to shut me down, drop people that are working for me for 16 years because you want to do something absurd like this. You guys are out of control, and I think we should just recall you guys before you do more damage.
kids, they're all growing up here. I own hundreds of acres here in this county. And we have a system that is broken, just like Todd said. And is it a good system? No, it's broken. It wasn't a good system in the first place. I've been a builder for 20 years here. It's tough pulling a permit. You know, every time you turn around, the rules change just a little bit. They're trying to fix that, man.
You think?
I do think
I've
that.
been here for 16 years, and I've been in front of county commissioners time and again to get variances to run a small little business, machine shop, and I hear from someone, just go do what you're gonna do, we'll catch you up later, and we'll make it all good. And it gets pushed off year after year, and here I am, now 16 years later, right on the 95 corridor, not 400 yards off the corridor, 3 businesses around me, and you people are pulling the stunts. You know, the bottom line here is it's broken. But you know what? Where's your idea for commercial, industrial, for people to go to work? What are you guys going to do with the people that are here now, like you, sir? I've been here for 4 generations, too. And it just gets worse and worse. Now, what I'm concerned about is what you guys are going to take for a power grab that we don't see and use it against me for later. And I'm paying your bills. It's not good, guys.
I don't think you're hearing it right.
No, I think I am. Am I hearing it right, people?
He's trying to listen to all of you.
Well, I haven't been up to the board yet and been talked to, and I pay someone to be heard here.
I tried to develop 200 acres for 5 years, and I talked to county commissioners and the state, and finally, when I won in court after 5 years, the federal government stepped in to give the state government money to buy me out. I mean, it just doesn't make sense to have this outside agenda 21 stuff coming in.
Right.
I believe the Todd message, the commissioners really don't understand what they're doing.
Sir, we've got folks that have their hands raised for a long time. Sir.
Just for a second, Todd.
Sir, I can't. I respect you. I like you. We talked at the last meeting. I remember you. You're a very cool guy. I can't let people shout out because we have to maintain a sense of order. We'll hear everybody. We'll be around. But this woman has had her hand up for a long time and she must be tired. And we need to respect the people that raise their hand need to be heard because they're patient. Yes, ma'am.
I guess my fear is that, and this is no disrespect to anyone here because this is not how I see it, but my fear is that you see a bunch of country bumpkins that, well, can I just speak? Thank you, because I have been very respectful so far. And basically what I see is that it doesn't seem like either side is 100% hearing the other. And I think that you've got some men up here and a woman, it seems like, that are, willing to sit up here, which to me speaks volumes. Because when you were in the audience, we didn't even know who we were talking about or any of that type of thing. And I think the fact that you want to now get the word out is great, but I fear that you've done so much work already that you're going to kind of sweep this room under the carpet because the things that we're saying now is like, well, my gosh, we've already done all this work. What I'd like to see is just like that other lady was saying, and I think it's important that we try to speak to you intelligently so that we're not yelling at you and calling you names and saying all these things because that's not me, my style at all. But I think it's just as important that you're respectful to us and say, okay, maybe now we see something that we didn't see before. Maybe we recognize that those 17 people or however many people you said are on that committee, I don't know that that's working. Because it seems to me like the voice, the majority of the people that will be living with the decisions that are made are not on that committee. Maybe your committee needs to be bigger. Maybe you need some more of us just grassroots people who are actually living in these, pieces of property that we're talking about. But my feeling is that I would like to know, going forward, and I know the question's already been asked, but it wasn't specifically answered as far as I was concerned enough. How are we going to have a say? And then once you put the proposal out there, I really believe because these are our homes, that we should not have
with respect to what you're talking about, I think would be a referendum, put the bill out there and vote on it. I don't know what the answer to that is. It's really not my call. I have to produce the bill. And our recommendation is let people read that bill for some time and comment on it because it's important, because it makes the bill better. And I look out here and I see passion in the room. And I see some misunderstandings and some understandings that, you know, whether I have a personal agreement or disagreement doesn't really matter that much. Because really my job doesn't depend on anything other than informing people that I'm working with the likely consequences of those decisions. So we work
Answer
through
the
that.
question.
Yes. Yes, ma'am.
And so, yes, you're putting this out there, and I understand why you would be the presenter for this. It makes complete sense. However, now that the people that you are working with are hearing how we all feel, and I think, I don't know that I'm speaking for the whole group, but now that you all hear that, what can we do? And maybe you could pass the microphone over and let us hear from them. What can we be doing? How can we become involved in an impactful way? Because you can listen to us, you can see our emails all day long, but the truth of it is, how can we make a difference?
Great.
How can we help you really understand what we need?
Let me address that because we as the consultant have opened up procedural ways to do that, you know, how to get into it and get involved. And so because we do that, I think it's appropriate for me to say that because ultimately I'm the guy that sort of puts it together because that's the job I'm hired to do.
You just said that you didn't have the authority for it.
To say a referendum, that's not my call, right.
Maybe that's something that can be just, I think you're gonna have a lot of people like going home a lot happier if they feel like there's going to be something going forward that they can do and that's going to be real instead of just having emails pop up of people, you know, answering here and there. You know, it's great that there is that email. It's great that we can do that, but I don't know that that's what is going to make any difference. And so I think if we could kind of give some assurances to this group, we could all go home feeling like, okay, we're moving forward and everybody's going to get an opportunity to be part of this.
Great.
So I still think maybe the passing of the microphone.
Sure. You asked two questions. So one of the questions was, you know, can we have a vote of the community? And the other question was, before that, how do we get information and feedback and participation and even philosophy into this code that's effective? Well, into it means that you've affected it. And I think that, you know, to the extent that you use the internet as technology, when you provide feedback, it shows up in real time. And when we address it, we respond in real time. And you'll see the comments and responses now if you go home tonight and take a look. And so I think it's fairly effective. You can see as the code develops how your comments have been incorporated into it. We take that seriously. Sometimes we let the discussion cook a little bit to see sort of where people are. But you know, it's important to us to try to use that. But we also look at the emails that come in and the comments, and we understand. We hear a lot of heat and philosophy and things like that without a lot of specifics. I'd be real interested in the variance because we can fix that. I mean, you're in a position now where we can fix that. And so the stuff that we're aware of, we heard that there was somebody had Little League playing in their front yard, and they were told, well, you're not a park, you can't do that or whatever. And I don't know how the story went, and I don't know when that occurred, but we just made sure to address it. Like, of course you can do that. Nobody's going to get involved in saying you can't do that. Here's a whole bunch of stuff that we normally do with our houses that there's no way that the county's going to go there and touch that. And so we made sure to put that in. And we want to know the range of that stuff. And let me pass it on in relation to that to any commissioner that wants to pick it up. But I just want to make sure you're aware of that.
Let's hear from you.
Thanks, Todd.
As that gentleman over there said, when it comes letter or by mail, traditional, whatever address you have on that. Previous settlement, to send people notices that there's this meeting, there's that meeting, things are being proposed as a, means of communication. And I think that there would be a lot more trust among the citizens. They felt like there was more communication. And I'm not quite sure what.
I guess I'm disappointed in the process that I was chairman of the planning commission. First off, we have a comprehensive plan. The last one we updated in 1994, and it became woefully out of date as the county had changed. That's what started us on the process of updating the comprehensive plan. And as when I was chairman of the planning commission during the comprehensive plan process, we had 125 open meetings that were duly noticed. Sometimes we'd have 2 and 3 people show up. And we went out to Micah Grange, and we went out to Harrison, and we went up to Athol, and sometimes it was very frustrating, and I guess we failed in trying to get out. There were articles in the paper. We actually put out a press release Friday. I didn't see anything in the paper, and I'm not just blaming the paper right now. I know Brent's, my term letter, got a lot of input. Well, I just heard about this idea about maybe sending a letter to, or a postcard or something of a notice of every meeting. It's an interesting idea. Talk to the commissioners. I know some people, I'm just going to say honestly, ladies and gentlemen, some people will be critical because it's going to be an expense that we're going to incorporate.
Okay. That's okay with us.
But I know Todd is the person that we hired after a search. We put out an RFQ, request for qualifications, in the western United States. We had 9 firms respond. 1 from Spokane, nobody from Coeur d'Alene responded to this application. And we assembled a search committee, or an interview committee. And what we did, instead of just the commissioners picking, or just the planning commission picking, we actually went out and asked different interest groups, chambers of commerce, environmental groups, builders associations like NIBCA, neighborhood property groups that have been active in the comprehensive plan process to send representatives to this interview panel, because we didn't want to handpick the team. We wanted those interest groups that have been so active in the process to interview. And we had an interview process. We had 4 firms that we kind of made the final cut to the interview. I just kind of give them a little historical basis. There were 3 firms that were scored very high. 1 firm that actually came rated highest, they were from Chicago, Illinois, called Duncan Associates. I'm just going to tell you, their attitude on drafting these ordinances, the ordinances are to implement the comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan was developed over 4 years with citizen input. And this other firm that was very highly rated, their attitude when they gave us the interview, and they scored very high on the interview from these 4 panels, they appeared before 4 panels, was to take our comprehensive plan, go back to their offices, and draft our ordinances that would pass legal muster and come back and here's your ordinances. And we wound up choosing Kennedy Keys because of their public, what we thought was their expertise, their ability to come up with solutions for complex situations. We have a very complex county. This is in Kansas. It's not flat. We have a very diverse geographic region. And we have confidence in Todd and his company to come up with innovative solutions.
Dan, just real quick. Hey, a real common planning employees that have 125 meetings because they know most of the public can attend 125 meetings. We have to actually work for them.
Actually, I was a volunteer along with the 6 planning commission members.
We have to actually work for them. We can't attend 125 meetings. This lady has like absolutely wasting our taxpayer dollars, coming up with whatever plan you want to have. Put it up to a referendum vote. Don't just shove it through and say, you're going to take this and you're going to pass that on your bill. That's what everybody is up in arms about. And that's what you're doing, and that's why it's
We're looking, I've been looking for input. We've been in this process over a year now with Todd. We asked people to read the code, tell me what parts of it you don't like. I ask people, tell me what doesn't work. What, in this section, what don't you like? Is the setback wrong? is the lot size wrong? I'd like to hear. And we have made amendments along the way. I personally met with the Coeur d'Alene Lakeshore Property Owners Association and Spokane River Property Owners Association, who are very vocal groups about buffering on shoreline development. And because of their input, we've taken, and it was an article in the paper here, about a month ago, about a very significant tax difference. Listen to those people, listening, saying, what we were throwing out there isn't gonna work, so let's go this way.
The input you have to have to let people
Do you wanna comment here?
I know, but we've just been told that we have to close, the library closes at 8, the building shuts down at 8 o'clock. We gotta get all the table, all the chairs and everything put away. We still, I mean, this is very important to everyone here. And
Just tell us how you're gonna contact us. and let
Where's
us
the signage?
review the situation.
Where's the signage?
It's making its way right here.
that's a very expensive, it's about $70,000 hit. It is, I'm just telling you, if we're gonna notice every meeting, that's gonna turn this into a very expensive proposition. That's something that we need to discuss and we need to talk about and stuff like that. It's something that we'll be talking about. It's been in the newspaper. There's been stories on it, there's been articles. We'll stay up here